with the British monarchy. And you also do know that on this day, Osagyefo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, Ghana's first prime minister, was sworn in as the country's first president, and Ghana adopted its own constitution, symbolizing full self-governance and sovereignty. This morning, the morning show is dedicated to the memory of Osagyefo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah and all others who fought to gain independence and to also gain a republican status for the Republic of Ghana. I've been joined in the studios by Mr. Albie Walls, who is a member of All African People's Revolutionary Party, AAPRP. Good morning to you, sir.
Good morning.
And Madame Roliayana, who is not new to the station. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Kewedi.
And Mr. Chiche Opoku, who is the convener, Socialist Movement of Ghana. Good morning to you, sir.
Good morning, sir.
So even though I've given a brief background, I think it's important to get the proper historical perspectives of this particular day, what it symbolizes, the significance of it, and all of that. Let me start with you, Mr. Chichi.
Okay, thank you very much. Happy Republic Day to all the viewers. I think the context is as follows. We had waged actually a centuries-long struggle for liberation. We had dealt with slavery. We had eventually been colonized by the British. But particularly after 1949, with the emergence of the CPP, that struggle changed gear. That struggle became more and more militant. And that struggle focused more clearly on the fundamental questions of why we were oppressed. It had to do with our economic exploitation and the necessity of a system of oppression to lock the exploitation in place. So Kwame Nkrumah and the CPP set out a path for moving the people of the then Gold Coast into a more wholesome, more productive, more free situation, and defined that that agenda could only be achieved in the context of a wider African liberation and unity. We achieved the first principal milestone on that journey in 1957, when we became a self-governed nation, but we were within the Commonwealth. Now, that may be symbolic to a lot of people who don't know the history, because the Commonwealth still exists, and there are still countries in the Commonwealth like Canada, I think Jamaica as well, Australia and so on, who still have the constitutional position that the Queen, well, now the King of England, is their head of state. So they are still formally locked into a system which is aristocratic in its structure and its assumptions about how social relations should be conducted, and still defers to the ruling elite of the United Kingdom and the British monarchy, which, again, if people know their history, was probably the single largest slave trader in the history of the world. It's easy for people to say that it was Britain, it was the white people and so on, but you need to understand that there was an institutional character to this. The Crown of England sponsored the slave trade. The Crown of England, as a family, invested in the slavery of our people, in the transportation of our people to the New World, and their treatment as pack animals for hundreds of years. And that's a large part of the wealth that the royal family and the British elite enjoys even today. So in becoming independent, but within the Commonwealth and the Queen as a head of state, we were still paying tribute. We were still recognizing that system as the peak of social aspiration. We accepted those limitations, that we were still part of a monarchical system. So for Kwame Nkrumah and for the original CPP, the idea that independence was part of a process of economic liberation, economic revolution, and continental unification meant that those symbols had to go. It wasn't just symbolism, but it was symbolic, but it was more than symbolic. The ties that we had to the UK in that era were real. It was very much similar to what France continues to enjoy with its former colonies and so on. So the struggle to transform from an independent country within the Commonwealth to a republic in which we elected our own head of state democratically, in which we therefore declared that all Ghanaians, all citizens were equal, was a hugely important one. And projecting that to the rest of Africa as the way in which we wanted to shape continental relations, continental social relations, continental political relations, was also hugely important. So 1st of July was not simply about Kwame Nkrumah wanting to be head of state, but it was about an important transition, an important transformation for our people, for our society, and I think also for the entire African continent.
Let me still stay with you, and I think it's important to draw whether there's a distinction, if any, between the 6th of March and the 1st of July, because this argument has come up a lot of times, and I think that clarity ought to be given. That what is the symbiotic relationship between the 6th of March and the 1st of July, particularly flowing from the decisions which the previous administration took relative to 1st of July and wanting to place irrelevance on the Republic Day. That is why I want that distinction drawn.
Okay, what I've tried to say is that it's a journey, it's a continuum. 6th of March was an important day. It was an important assertion of our independence that deserves to be celebrated, that we need to celebrate and understand historically. But it was not the end of the journey.
Right.
It gave us a certain level of political independence. 1st of July deepened that.
Right.
1st of July rejected the British sovereign as our head of state and declared that we will conduct our own foreign relations as an independent nation. Okay. But even that is not the end of the journey.
Right.
Because as I tried to point out, the goal is a certain state of society for Kwame Nkrumah and for people like myself, that is socialism on a Pan-African basis. So these are milestones in our struggle to achieve a certain destiny. Okay, they are important milestones, but the struggle continues. And what we saw over the last 8-9 years was that the forces who initially opposed first independence and then later Republican status, because they opposed the political agenda that it represented. If independence was not going to put the leaders of the, I've forgotten what they were called at the time, it was UP or something. For them, independence was about a section of the Ghanaian elite taking over the power that the British colonial elite had enjoyed in the Gold Coast. So it was about their political elevation, but the sustenance of the economic relations that Britain and the Gold Coast had. So they would then become the direct managers of the colonial enterprise for Britain. Kwame Nkrumah's agenda was to overthrow that entire relationship and build something new. They lost in those early years, but they didn't go away. They haven't gone away, they won't go away. What we've seen over the last 8 years was a period in which they acquired political power, and having acquired political power, set out to, in their view, correct the errors that the Ghanaian people had made since 57 and since 1960. So you saw a whole campaign to erect symbols of their agenda, renaming universities, renaming streets, creating monuments, even renaming important national days, like the whole debate about Founder or Founders Day. This was a symbolic attempt to assert their dominance over society, and to assert that dominance, for example, in downplaying the Republican transition in 1960, what they were saying is, what the essential message is, that we continue to support the elitist aristocratic arrangements that pertained up until that time, and we will even try and reinstall them today. Okay. So that was the message, and that has been the struggle. Underneath all this symbolism about apostrophes and the names of universities and places and so on, is a struggle about what is the level of autocracy that this society will tolerate, what is the level of democracy that the masses will impose on the institutions of state and the power of elites. That's the struggle that's still going on.
Very well.
And that's the fight we still have to win.
Well, beautiful preamble by our standards. Let me come to you, Mr. Albi Walls. I mean, before we look at the broader African conversation, let me just, first of all, take your initial commentary on the significance of today.
I agree with my comrade here. It's very important, but it's not the end. It's part of an ongoing process that has been in place for some time and will continue. Yes, we need to mark these milestones, and as their reflection of where we are in time, reflection of the conditions, the reflection of the consciousness of people. But the ultimate goal is, we want a living standard that's acceptable for the majority of people. Safe drinking water, decent housing, etc. So it's not a matter of holidays or special honoring special people, but it's the conditions in which we are living. So I think we don't want to lose sight of that, because we can see in many places around the world where the battle has become over a holiday instead of over the real conditions that matter to people. And we need to be careful that they give us a holiday and then we think we've won something, and then they take it away, and the battle is just to get the holiday back. And we've forgotten that really the struggle was about hunger, was about health care, was about those kinds of things. And so we just need to be mindful and be very careful that we don't get distracted from these battles over the names of roads or buildings or universities, etc. That it's really about the conditions in which we want to improve the lives of conditions of the people, which I think is what Sajifo was trying to do with his efforts. He wasn't, which is why he was saying, the famous speech about the independence is meaningless without the total liberation of Africa. Many people would why we should celebrate this. This is what it was about. Well, no, it wasn't. And similarly with Republic Day, we know that it's linked up with what was happening in the world at that time. And maybe later I can, share a little bit about how I perceived it, because I wasn't here in Ghana at that time, but I could see conditions and reflections of what was happening here where I was, and indeed around the world. You can see similar kinds of things where African people were resisting and fighting for justice, fighting for decent living. So I think it's very important. But again, we don't want to put all of our interest and our focus on this particular day as a day of recognition and celebrating the past. But what does it mean as far as how can we use this? How is it helping us move forward to the goal that we ultimately want to achieve?
What came with the if you like, the political or Republican independence really was responsibility, that we as a people ought to be responsible for how far we want to go in terms of addressing the material conditions of the people. And you have quite profoundly put it, because from that time till today, the material conditions are still prevailing. Now, just by way of education, how do you think we can draw inspiration from our past and marry that with our present and forge a path that obviously will address those teething conditions confronting our people?
I think, it's been said by many great thinkers that history is critical in terms of understanding history to know where you're going. And I think, we need to look at Republic Day in that context. My comrade spoke about the CPP and when Nkrumah coming back to Ghana after the 5th Pan-Africanist Congress. the formation of the CPP, the Positive Action Movement of 1950, you know, 57 independence, 60. Then immediately after Republic Day, even immediately after attaining Republican status, he continued with the operation to liberate the continent of Africa, uniting the continent of Africa, with the initial formation of the OAU some 3 years after Republic Day.
Yeah.
Even, I think much of it is reflected in some of the documents, some of the books that he wrote.
No, his speech actually, 1963.
1963 speech
Yeah.
is critical, yes, in terms of outlining the future, where we're trying to get to. And sometimes, again, we forget about that. We look at the conferences and the dignitaries who were present, but not looking at the essence of what they were trying to achieve. But again, I think that looking at this progression, we can see, you know, again, what do we get from this? I think we can see progress or regression. But for me, I can see progress from where we started, you know, from a period of enslavement to colonialism to independence to actually strong advocacy work for unity and eliminating apartheid, and all of those kinds of things came about because of that struggle. So I think Republic Day can mark a place in history for us to see how much further do we have to go. How far, what steps do we need to take? And again, not go back. It's like if you're climbing a mountain, you set a beach point so you don't go below that point. But you may take you a while to go higher, but you definitely don't want to go below the point that you've achieved.
Madam, please.
No,
you want to? Okay, all right. Well, Madam Voliana, let me pick your initial thoughts on it, and then we'll ask further questions.
Okay, I'd like to say good morning to all our cherished viewers. For me, I look at Republic Day, and I ask myself, what have we gotten from it as a republic? I'm looking at so many things like education, like our culture, like our way of life, our family values, the way we view leadership, you know, from chieftaincy through democratic rules, through one man, one vote, and all that. What has it done for us as a country? I'm looking at a situation where I don't know where we would have been if we had not been a republic. Because even though we became a republic, we inherited so many things that till date is haunting us, till date is drawing us back. We inherited an educational system that is not good for us, I must say. Like everybody else was reading the classics, the humanities and things, and we left the technology, we left all the other hands-on, which our people needed for development aside. So I look at that, and I look at our family values. I look at what we as Africans have always been used to, the extended family system, how we supported each other, and then how we have inherited a unitary kind of a nuclear system where we can see the ills that it's doing to us as Africans and as Ghanaians. I'm also looking at a situation where in our development we have come rather far, I must say, as a republic. We may not have gotten there if we hadn't gotten that republic status. Because I remember even after the republic, the kinds of things that we inherited, afternoon tea, siestas, and the likes of it, so that we felt that those were important things for you to be able to leave office, go and play golf or go and play tennis, and then you go and have a siesta, you get up and have an afternoon tea, and you know, and all the gentlemen were in their suits and their ties, and the women were in their gloves and their hats, and these were supposed to be the elites of society. So we then forgot, you know, the main issue of our independence, that is drawing the people along with us, developing, making sure that they got what was expected to be given to them, good housing, good water, good education, and all that. So for me, Republic Day should be a day of reflection as to how we've been able to let go of some of the situations that have not really helped us. And one main thing for me is our educational system. I just think that it hasn't helped us. We've just taken ourselves into a system that we don't understand, and that hasn't really done much for us. So I am happy that Republic Day is here, and I think that we should all celebrate it. I remember growing up, it was all pomp and pageantry, all the cultural displays, all the, and we had souvenirs to mark the day and all that. So we should be proud of ourselves as Ghanaians. We've come a long way.
Well, Mr. Chichwe, let me come to you again. How do you think, in your view, these celebrations should further advance our aspirations as people?
Well, I think first of all,
right,
we must have a process through which we state what those aspirations are. Because I think it's become very vague, especially for younger people. I think there's a lot of confusion about what aspirations are. Not a lot of our kids have societal aspirations.
Right.
They have individual aspirations. Right. I want to earn so much money. I want to do this amount of traveling. I want to become chief executive. There's a lot of that. There's a lot of individualism that has been built into the system, particularly after the overthrow of Kwame Nkrumah, and very much in this Fourth Republic. The aspirations have shifted, and I think we have a confused youth. I think that Republic Day could be the occasion, not just as today, but it could be the focus around which we restart that discussion about who do we want to be? What does it mean to have a Pan-African aspiration for Ghanaians, for the kids, for the youth today? What does that mean? What is achievement? Is achievement having a big four-wheel drive in a huge house which you only use 1/10 of? Is achievement seeing uplifting those in society who are suffering? Is achievement being able collectively to even just feed yourselves? Because that's something that Ghana is not able to do today. It's insane, but it's true. We're importing almost $300 million worth of basic food every year. So certainly last year. And these are things that we can produce here. At the same time, we have a huge youth unemployment problem. What is the aspiration? That a handful of people become super rich and everybody else is dead poor, is uneducated, doesn't have access to health care? What is the aspiration? So we can use Republic Day to restart that discussion and to set aspirations and the agendas that build them, that uplift all of us, that give our youth a better sense of identity, a better sense of destiny. Because for Kwame Nkrumah, independence, Pan-Africanism was a commitment. It wasn't just something we want to achieve so we can be a world power. It was a commitment to certain values in society. It was a commitment to how we can all collectively improve the situation for everybody. So, for me, that's the first thing. Let's have the discussion around Republic Day, around Independence Day, around Christmas, for Christ's sake. Let us use all these points to define and advance an aspiration for all of us, and not just for a few of us.
Brilliant.
That's the starting point. Okay.
Mr. Walls, I take a casual look at some of the African countries, and for days such as this, they try to build something. They try to do something. They try to, build a school, build a hospital. And I would want to, even though I was not born at the time, admit that the character given to the Republic Day was so we could have a country where we will be self-governing and to do things that will better the lives of our people and the continent at large. But again, you look at the celebrations over the period from 1992 till today, we have not really significantly done anything that we can point to say that on this particular day, at least in this community, either the people or the government or collectively, we built a school or we built a hospital or we built some railway somewhere or we bought this ambulance for these people, etc. Must we, and again, I think you mentioned it, but I think we need to rehash it, and expand the argument so that government officials, I know they are watching us this morning, they will listen to some advice so that beyond the celebration, it's also something monumental that we can point to say that this was built on this particular day.
Well, I think it's true that oftentimes we don't have anything to mark or to signify other than, maybe going to the beach or celebrating some special, rebroadcast of a Nkrumah speech on television, but eating fufu. But I think those things are helpful. But again, to me, it's more the idea than the concrete, the construction or the physical manifestation. That it might inspire some youth who say, well, my school says built, inaugurated, commissioned on July 1, 2025. They may ask, well, does that date have any significance? And then we can use that as an example to explain the significance of that particular date. But again, I don't think that's as critical as having this vision that my comrade, this understanding of what are we trying to achieve. It's not just about the buildings. It's not just about the structures, but it's about the values. It's about having the understanding, the appreciation for our responsibility in the world, with my life. It's not, I have a degree in engineering, so therefore I can build roads. It's about, well, what is needed in my community? How can I help achieve that? It might not be building roads, may not be the most essential thing that I need to do right now. So it's more understanding that I need to find the contribution that I can best make and be committed to doing it. It might not result in that four-wheel drive or that big mansion, but it's even more important than that. And that's what I think we have to get people to appreciate and value. We shouldn't measure our success in life by those kinds of material acquisitions that we may have achieved or may have received, but more so, at the end of the day, did I do my best to advance society? And that's the kind of values that I think we need to try and instill. But because of this system that we're in and dominated by, it encourages more of an individualistic perspective. So I think, again, for those of us who know the difference, we should be trying to educate folks and conscientize people to appreciate the importance of something more than those material acquisitions.
Mental slavery is important. I think both my panelists have made that quite clearly, that it appears that, especially in Mr. Shushie's submission, where he spoke quite eloquently about the fact that what are our aspirations, what are we looking for? Our aspirations to meet our individual needs or to meet the needs of the collective, right? And so that, in my estimation, comes down to one of the things that Osagyefo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah sought to achieve through education, which is to educate people, educate our minds, and liberate our minds from enslavement. Let's now juxtapose his vision to that of the vision that we have now, particularly even with our educational system. How we can learn lessons from history to guide our path into the future.
So can I say that, can we start off with a Republic Day where we all eat Ghanaian food, wear Ghanaian clothes, behave like Ghanaians, you understand? Patriotism, a bit of nationalism would do us a lot of good. We're looking at a country that has lost its youth to social media. You understand? They are learning all manner of things from all around the globe. And they have lost sight of who they are sometimes. Gradually, we are trying to get them back. We're trying to get the youth. It's the youth that need to be recognized on this day. They are the ones that we should be showcasing this day too. To let them know that it was a hard battle getting independence, but it was harder getting the fact that we wanted to be free of the monarchy and all that goes with it. And I am looking at a day where, as Ghanaians, we will recognize ourselves first as Ghanaians, you know, because we seem to have lost it. Everything that we think about these days seems foreign to me. We're looking at the big cars, we're looking at the big mansions, we're looking at all those things that ordinarily, as black people, we would normally not be looking at. We'll be looking at, black people will be looking at the quality of food that we have on our plates, the quality of education, the quality of housing, healthcare, and all that. But these days, it seems that we have lost it. And the youth, unfortunately, have also lost it. So we need to carry the youth along with us. We need to educate them about being patriotic, being nationalistic. When we read about the corruption cases that are happening in all African countries, it's because of the lack of patriotism. When you remember days gone, it wasn't that there was no corruption, but they were being patriotic. So you didn't get someone vandalizing state property. You wanted to protect. And I guess that was why Kwame Nkrumah formed the Young Pioneer Movement. It was to inculcate these kinds of values of patriotism, of nationalism, of love of country into the young people. And they then went home and also inculcated those same things to their parents. So we even heard of children reporting their parents for deeds that they felt was unpatriotic. You understand? If you brought that one up today, it would be a different story. You understand? But we have to start from somewhere. So I think that we should focus on the youth now. Not for the old people, we are gone. We should focus on the youth. We should let them understand what patriotism and nationalism is. We should let them be proud of whom they are. It's not just saying I'm a Ghanaian and you're not doing the Ghanaian things. The Ghanaian says good morning. The Ghanaian says please. The Ghanaian says thank you. You understand? The Ghanaian is that person who is proud of the next black person, calls the person a brother, a sister. That's a Ghanaian. And that is who we are. And that's how we should live. You know. So I think that all this would not come to fruition if we do not bring in the youth and let them.
I've engaged a lot of young people who are of the opinion that the reason why it appears that young people are not patriotic or dedicated to the country is by reason of the fact that the elderly that we had did very little in ensuring that they protected the history of this country, in ensuring that they educated them on the right path to take, and particularly the political elite. You know, this one will come and change the history of this country. This one will come and change the history of this country to satisfy themselves. And so they are saying that even if you look at our educational system, that's why I brought it in. When I was young, we used to read a lot. We had history courses. Now we don't. You know, so there are several things which have been taken out of our educational system, which, in the estimation of the young people, have not helped, you know, in reshaping their thoughts about the country and being very patriotic. Now, I cite you an example how social media, you know, was, if you like, a lot of people were excited about a video that was circulating on social media in which young people, when they heard the national anthem, I think at a flower border, had paused, to listen and observe. You know, people were praising them. And I'm like, we used to do this all the time.
Exactly.
Even when the Black Stars were playing and we heard the national anthem, we used to get up to stand and observe it. So why are people surprised that people are observing some of these things and demonstrating patriotism in this manner? And again, they blame you guys for failing to do the needful.
They shouldn't blame us.
Maybe I should start with you, Akichichi. Maybe I should start with you and we'll go around with that.
No, our generation lost that battle. It is perfectly accurate that what the younger people are doing today is a reflection of the environment in which they have been brought up.
Right.
It's not always what you say and preach in church and so on. They see how their elders behave. They see what their elders value. and they replicate, and they internalize, and they end up being lost, and we have this chaotic, undirected society. So yes, my generation has a lot of. we have to take that blame.
But must we have a certain?
But what I think you need, what is important, is where we started. We are in a struggle. The politics, the education, and so on, is not for its own sake.
Right.
We are in a struggle to end the exploitation of our society. So in the same way that colonialism, colonial oppression, or slave oppression, the oppression of slaves, was engineered to hold a system of exploitation in place, the same ideological battle is being fought out today. There are people who benefit from the confusion of our society.
Right.
There are people who benefit from the inability of a younger generation to analyze a political situation and see who is benefiting from it.
Right.
I mentioned that we're importing almost $300 million worth of food. Forget other things, worth of food, while the young people are unemployed. If you're a young person and you're looking at that situation now, why will you respect your elders? Why will you respect the symbols that elders put forward? Somebody is making, God knows what, $100 million importing food on the back of my unemployment, my misery, my poverty, my lack of a job, and so on. You always have to look for who is benefiting from the situation, and therefore who invests. The debacle we saw over the last 8 years of the curricula in schools being changed, the textbooks in schools being changed, it wasn't just an accident. There are social interests invested in confusing us, in keeping us divided and disorganized, so that they can take away what we sweat for. You must always look for that. It's not just that Ghanaians are confused and so on. There's actually a process of exploitation underlying all these political and social developments that we see. It is not random. It is not random. So yes, my generation, particularly through after the overthrow of Nkrumah, the onslaught, the ideological onslaught, it was real. It's not random. We failed because we were under pressure, and we did not recognize the character of this pressure and what it meant in terms of resources.
Right.
We still have today essentially the economy we had in the 1920s. We export cocoa, we export gold. Well, timber is not as important now. Oil and gas has come to replace that, so on. But in certain terms, things are going downwards.
Yeah.
Because in the 1920s, at least, Ghanaian households were self-sufficient in food. We ate what we produced. Now the rice is imported. Even maize is imported. Cooking oil is imported. Sugar. We are more and more dependent on on people outside for the basic necessities. The only way you can sustain such an illogical system is if you confuse people. And that's what we are dealing with.
This goes against everything Osagyefo sought to achieve, because in 1960 the intention was to be self-sufficient, to govern ourselves, to be able to make decisions for ourselves, and to produce within the country what we could, and largely depend on ourselves as opposed to depending on external, imports and things like that. It goes against everything that the Osagyefo stood for.
I'm not sure if I agree completely on a couple of things here. That and I can't absolve previous generations of any mistakes and errors and responsibilities, but I certainly think that even the fact that we are here today in Pan-African TV has some result of contributions of folks who resisted and all kinds of struggles and oppressions and forced into exile and execute all kinds of things that people did not give up on and maintain the vision that reflected by Nkrumah. But I think also the issue of nationalism, I think we're looking at it maybe a little bit too narrowly, because I think another important part of Republic Day in 1960 for Ghana, because I think I've heard that this is one of the most widely celebrated holidays in the world, are countries that achieved independence from British colonialism. So, every country, many countries in the world have a Republic Day. So for Ghana, the Republic Day in 1960, I believe there was a new constitution that was adopted at that time. And an essential part of that constitution, as I understand it, was looking at Ghana as part of a whole of Africa. So when he was talking, as I understand, when he's talking about nationalism, he's not talking about just Ghana, he's talking about Africa. And so I don't think he understood or he expected Ghana to achieve the high levels that we're talking of or thinking of, unless it was linked up with the continent of Africa. So that's why the big push immediately continued towards the unification of Africa with the OAU and the African Union, etc. So, I guess was it relinquishing sovereignty of the country of Ghana to the whole of a united Africa?
Absolutely.
I think that's a critical point. If we don't recognize that, we will be confused into thinking it's all about our traditions and things that we, in this little territory, which is relatively small in global scale, we think of Ghana as opposed to Africa. And I think young people today in particular, then linking it to where they are, I think are more and more recognizing this concept that, my neighbor is from Togo, my classmate is from Burkina, the seller who buy this from is from Cote d'Ivoire, and we all have the same culture. We're all we all live in the same conditions. So I think this idea that we don't want to allow Republic Day in Ghana to force us or to make ourselves think that we're separate from or so unique that we don't have responsibility or codependency on the rest of the continent of Africa. I think to me, that's a very, very important part of, in addition to having, removing the monarchy as the sovereign power in the country and having a president instead of a prime minister, it was this notion that Ghana is part of a much larger entity, and it's that entity which will give us the power that we need to protect and defend our values, to achieve food self-sufficiency. All of these things can only be achieved when we have something much more powerful than the, quote, nation of Ghana that we think of today. I mean, many people who talk about a borderless Africa or, the fact that, we're importing things from UK or from America when this could be imported from a country just across the river, and it's just it's not correct. It's not in our interest. So I think that's an important part of Republic Day that we sometimes lose sight of. With this pride of nation and thinking of nation as only Ghana as opposed to Africa.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm sorry if I gave that impression, but he's absolutely right.
Right.
For Nkrumah, nationalism was Pan-African nationalism.
Right. Right.
He did not see Ghana as a different political entity from Tanzania. He did not see that Ghana had a future as a standalone sort of bright spot in a dark continent. If we did not uplift the whole continent, we had no future. And I think Ghana's own history has demonstrated that. Second correction that I need to make, again, if I gave the wrong impression, is that I do believe we have made progress. If you take the long sweep of history, as Alpi pointed out, we're not slaves anymore. There are opportunities that we have now that our parents didn't have. We are far more educated Africa than our parents' generation. I've recently been thinking a lot about the Volta Lake and so on, and I've just been amazed, wondering how did we do that engineering in the 60s when we literally had no trained engineers and so on. How did Nkrumah manage to put that together? It was done on the basis of solidarity with other people. So I'm not by any means suggesting that there's a standalone, isolated Ghana which can achieve some levels of civilization that are fantastic. That's not on the cards. We either rise together as Africa, or we continue balkanized, fragmented, isolated and exploited. But we have made progress,
right.
And there are huge opportunities for the youth today. I agree entirely that this is all about them. There are huge opportunities for them.
Right. You're still watching the special edition of the News Private segment here on Pan-African Television. Madam Ole, let me come to you before I go for this first commercial break, where we're going to play some videos from 1960. But your thoughts on what we've been discussing relative to the youth?
I've always believed that Nkrumah's call for the unification of Africa would have sealed everything else. But we are all fragmented. Most of our leaders are actually bowing to Western powers, and because of that, it affects all of us. Why should we import salt, like Nigerians import salt from Brazil or wherever, when you can get salt in Ghana? Why do we import certain things, like you were saying, when we can, as Africans, trade amongst ourselves? But every time there's a face somewhere directing our leaders, as Africans, aside the very first, I might sound some way, but I'm looking at the era of Kwame Nkrumah, Nyerere, Kaunda, and the likes, who came up as the first in their various countries and were trying to lift up their people. And I'm just opposing that to the leadership we're having now in Africa, where we have people living for 40 years, 25, 30, and meanwhile, their people are still impoverished. Meanwhile, their people, most of them are uneducated. You understand? These people do not understand what it means, for that Pan-Africanism, that all of us together can make it work. So today, a lot of African leaders are afraid of that embargo against the visa. The inability to be able to travel, to have fun, or to go and sit with Trump, or to go and sit with Krema or somebody, you understand? That alone sends shivers around them. You get me? So they would rather look the other side when it comes to development, when it comes to doing things that would better the lives of their own people. They'd rather go and sit with those people and drink tea. You get me? So we need to go back to the drawing board. We need to start again. It seems a lot of African leaders have just sat back. Look at what's happening in Togo. We have not heard from ECOWAS. Why? Years ago, we would have heard from ECOWAS. We would have heard from the African Union. Probably Ghana would have issued a statement. Nigeria would have issued a statement. But today, people are being killed, and we are sitting down. Nobody's saying anything. Are you getting me? So we've lost it. It's because our leaders, present-day leaders, have lost the battle. They are thinking just about themselves, and that is it. And that self-centeredness is what has gotten us to this side. You understand? And because of that, I agree with them. The youth are actually also looking at us. You get me? History has been distorted. Our history has been distorted. The books that have been written are not reflective of actually what happened. So they are not well informed. And unfortunately for us, most of our young people do not like reading, because sometimes you can get some form of information from another author. You read one author, I read about 3, 4, 5 authors to get the real story. You get me? Because everybody sees it in a different light. Whatever happened, even during independence, the struggle, People have written different things, but you have to read broadly to be able to decipher what exactly the story was. But we don't even want to read. The libraries are not there anymore. You know, growing up, you could just get up, get into the bus, and go to the central library, borrow a book, go home, and go and read. You understand? Even going to bed, you felt that you had to read, even though they were whatever. But bedtime stories were things that we used to read. How many people read bedtime stories? How many people actually sit back and say that I'm interested in what is happening next door in Nigeria or next door in Liberia? You understand? I asked a young man yesterday, I said, do you know the names of our ministers? No. But those days, you and I, when we were going, at least my time, we knew every minister's name. We're interested in governance. We're interested in the people who were looking after us. But these days, it's individualistic. Everybody's minding their own business. So long as you are okay, then you're fine. But that shouldn't be the case. So we should use the Republic Day to at least reconnect to the past, the better past.
Well, let's go for this quick video break. We'll be back shortly. Stay with us.
Forward then to independence. To independence now. Tomorrow, the United States of Africa.
Before 1961, the Black Stars had been coached by Europeans. As part of his plan to Africanize national life, Nkrumah brought back Charles Gyamfi, who was playing in Germany for Fortuna Düsseldorf, to become national coach. He and the players all had direct access to the head of state.
Being a star within the Black Star, I can always go to him without even making an appointment. I go to him. If I'm in need of anything, I go to him and tell him.
The Black Stars became the ambassadors of Ghana, spreading Nkrumah's gospel of Pan-Africanism.
I remember in 1965, during the Kenya's Independence Day, we were asked to go to Kenya and exhibit the Ghana brand of football in those days. On Sunday, when we met them, we beat them 13 goals to nil, a Kenyan national team. And Jomo Kenyatta was there. A very nice independence present for Jomo Kenyatta.
At this time, the progress of the Black Stars reflected Ghana's economic and political dominance of the continent. When Ghana hosted the African Cup of Nations in 1963, the Black Stars were a shining example to the rest of Africa. Gyamfi, the only black African coach in the competition, Agri Finn, the first of 4 Black Star captains to lift the Nations Cup. Brimming with confidence, the Black Stars travelled to Tunisia to defend their African title 2 years later, meeting the hosts in the final. Nkrumah had personally promised new houses to the Black Stars if they secured a second African championship, which they did.
In 1965, I was the footballer of the year. I was given a television, and a special song by the police was played for me. All the ministers of state were standing up, and I was the only person who was sitting there, but I wept tears of joy.
But by this time, Nkrumah's popularity was declining.
Nkrumah confronted a lot of problems pursuing that agenda. He was seen as a man who had a bloated image of himself, who had a personal agenda to lead Africa and not necessarily to bring the people of Africa together.
In 1966, whilst on a trip to China, Nkrumah was overthrown by a military coup. Ghanaian football would never be the same again.
Recently we were asked to come for an award. We were given a tea kettle. A tea kettle.
For days, the big question in Accra, capital of Ghana, was, would the Queen's visit be cancelled? The people there, optimists by and large, seemed quite sure it would not be. But as there's been a spot of bother lately, the British government had to be satisfied that it would be safe for Her Majesty to go, especially when some damage was done, even to the statue of President Nkrumah. Hurriedly, Mr. Duncan Sands, Commonwealth Secretary, flew to Ghana to examine the security arrangements. The Ghanaian Foreign Minister received him on the President's behalf. Mr. Sands met pressmen and explained the position to them. It was, to all appearances, a pleasant meeting. The journalists appreciated the British Cabinet's anxiety in view of the recent bomb incidents, and they convinced him how tremendously disappointed everyone in Ghana would be if the Queen were advised to stay home. President Nkrumah himself was evidently quite unperturbed as he and Mr. Sands saw the now repaired feet of the statue. They decided that together they would travel the route of the royal procession. Their decision pleased thousands in Accra, whose enthusiasm made a good impression on the Commonwealth Minister. When it was all over, Mr. Sands flew home, part of the way in a Canberra bomber, to report favourably to the Cabinet. The decision? The tour was on. So, at London Airport, on the morning after Mr. Sands' report, the Queen and Prince Philip arrived to begin their flight. Some Ghanaians were among the people assembled to see them off. But as fog is no respecter of royal departures, there was a delay of almost an hour. Little Pearl Akwe, daughter of a Ghanaian student in London, presented a bouquet of orchids. To Mr. Iko Daniels, a law student, the Queen said she was much looking forward to the tour. To Mr. Macmillan and other ministers, the Queen bade goodbye when permission to take off was at last granted. Farewell also to the Earl of Scarborough, the Lord Chamberlain. Everyone at the airport felt that the right decision had been made and that consequences transcending all-round disappointment might have resulted had the tour been cancelled. This was the last look at England the Queen will have until she returns early in December. Not, of course, a bad time to be going, leaving winter behind. In less than 7 hours, the Boeing landed 3,600 miles away at Accra. Her Majesty's subjects wish her a successful and most pleasant tour.
A magnificent motor for the first president of Ghana, now a republic. Dr. Nkrumah is head of government as well as head of state. For the last time, the Governor-General's flag was flying in Accra as Lord Listowel, the last to hold office as Governor-General of Ghana, arrived for the ceremonies. Musical honors and a smart guard were accorded. A new republic must be scrupulously correct. As Lord Listowel entered the Parliament building, the flag was lowered. A matter for regret? Well, Ghana has chosen to remain in the Commonwealth anyway. There was a banquet to mark this great event in the history of the country, with Dr. Nkrumah making a speech. In the course of it, he thanked Lord Listowel for the Queen's message of good wishes. And a toast to the Republic. For all Ghanaians, naturally, it was a case of one celebration after another. They expressed their delight by dancing. Impromptu, al fresco. That's the way. When President Nkrumah, wearing Ghanaian costume for the occasion, drove through the capital, he got a great reception. That was natural enough too, for he, more than any other man, was responsible for the achievement of this moment. The people of Accra seem to be expressing their faith in his continuing leadership and the future of the Republic. A magnificent motor for the first president of Ghana, now a republic. Dr. Nkrumah is head of government as well as head of state. For the last time, the Governor-General's flag was flying in Accra as Lord Listowel, the last to hold office as Governor-General of Ghana, arrived for the ceremonies. Musical honors and a smart guard were accorded. A new republic must be scrupulously correct. As Lord Listowel entered the Parliament building, the flag was lowered. A matter for regret? Well, Ghana has chosen to remain in the Commonwealth anyway. There was a banquet to mark this great event in the history of the country, with Dr. Nkrumah making a speech. In the course of it, he thanked Lord Listowel for the Queen's message of good wishes. And a toast to the Republic. For all Ghanaians, naturally, it was a case of one celebration after another. They expressed their delight by dancing. Impromptu, al fresco. That's the way. When President Nkrumah, wearing Ghanaian costume for the occasion, drove through the capital, he got a great reception. That was natural enough too, for he, more than any other man, was responsible for the achievement of this moment. The people of Accra seem to be expressing their faith in his continuing leadership and the future of the Republic.
Forward then to independence. To independence now. Tomorrow, the United States of Africa.
Before 1961, the Black Stars, as the Ghanaian national team are known, had been coached by Europeans. As part of his plan to Africanize national life, Nkrumah brought back Charles Gyamfi, who was playing in Germany for Fortuna Düsseldorf, to become national coach. He and the players all had direct access to the head of state.
Being a star within the Black Star, I can always go to him without even making an appointment. I go to him. If I'm in need of anything, I go to him and tell him.
The Black Stars became the ambassadors of Ghana, spreading Nkrumah's gospel of Pan-Africanism.
I remember in 1965, during the Kenya's Independence Day, we were asked to go to Kenya and exhibit the Ghana brand of football in those days. On Sunday, when we met them, we beat them 13 goals to nil, a Kenyan national team. And Jomo Kenyatta was there. A very nice independence present for Jomo Kenyatta.
At this time, the progress of the Black Stars reflected Ghana's economic and political dominance of the continent. When Ghana hosted the African Cup of Nations in 1963, the Black Stars were a shining example to the rest of Africa. Gyamfi, the only black African coach in the competition, Agri Finn, the first of 4 Black Star captains to lift the Nations Cup. Brimming with confidence, the Black Stars travelled to Tunisia to defend their African title 2 years later, meeting the hosts in the final. Nkrumah had personally promised new houses to the Black Stars if they secured a second African championship, which they did.
In 1965, I was a footballer of the year. I was given a television, and a special song by the police was played for me. All the ministers of state were standing up, and I was the only person who was sitting there. But I wept, tears of joy.
But by this time, Nkrumah's popularity was declining.
Nkrumah confronted a lot of problems pursuing that agenda. He was seen as a man who had a bloated image of himself, who had a personal agenda to lead Africa and not necessarily to bring the people of Africa together.
In 1966, whilst on a trip to China, Nkrumah was overthrown by a military coup. Ghanaian football would never be the same again.
Recently, we were asked to come for an award. We were given a tea kettle. A tea kettle.
For days, the big question in Accra, capital of Ghana, was, would the Queen's visit be cancelled? The people there, optimists by and large, seemed quite sure it would not be. But as there's been a spot of bother lately, the British government had to be satisfied that it would be safe for Her Majesty to go, especially when some damage was done, even to the statue of President Nkrumah. Hurriedly, Mr. Duncan Sands, Commonwealth Secretary, flew to Ghana to examine the security arrangements. The Ghanaian Foreign Minister received him on the President's behalf. Mr. Sands met pressmen and explained the position to them. It was, to all appearances, a pleasant meeting. The journalists appreciated the British Cabinet's anxiety in view of the recent bomb incidents, and they convinced him how tremendously disappointed everyone in Ghana would be if the Queen were advised to stay home. President Nkrumah himself was evidently quite unperturbed as he and Mr. Sands saw the now repaired feet of the statue. They decided that together they would travel the route of the royal procession. Their decision pleased thousands in Accra, whose enthusiasm made a good impression on the Commonwealth Minister. it was all over, Mr. Sands flew home, part of the way in a Canberra bomber, to report favourably to the Cabinet. The decision? The tour was on. So, at London Airport, on the morning after Mr. Sands' report, the Queen and Prince Philip arrived to begin their flight. Some Ghanaians were among the people assembled to see them off. But as fog is no respecter of royal departures, there was a delay of almost an hour. Little Pearl Akwe, daughter of a Ghanaian student in London, presented a bouquet of orchids. To Mr. Iko Daniels, a law student, the Queen said she was much looking forward to the tour. To Mr. Macmillan and other ministers, the Queen bade goodbye when permission to take off was at last granted. Farewell also to the Earl of Scarborough, the Lord Chamberlain. Everyone at the airport felt that the right decision had been made, and that consequences transcending all-round disappointment might have resulted had the tour been cancelled. This was the last...
Well, welcome back. Thank you very kindly indeed for staying with us. This is the special edition here on Pan-African Television. It's 1st of July 2020. I nearly said 1960, 2025. Finally, let me take your final comments. Perhaps find a way of including into your submission whether or not Ghana has fulfilled the hopes and promises that come with becoming a republic. So that's maybe my final question to all of you, and then we wrap up. Let me start with Madam Briliana. Whether we have been able to fulfill the hopes and promises that comes with...
Free. I mean, that's a very important thing. We are free to do the things that we find important. We are free to educate ourselves the way we want to be educated, I guess. I think that Republic Day, it's a form of awareness, you know, that of unification, of national pride, and all those things. So I think that we've come a long way. We've developed enough. I mean, if you look around the African continent, I think Ghana has done very well for itself. And our human resource has also improved. You know, we have very well-educated people now. I think we're doing quite well. Yeah, I think we're doing quite well. So there's still a lot more to do, but we've done well.
Yeah.
I'm picking up from her last thing. Have to be done. I think that's the main, to me, that's the main point. And I guess sometimes I hear people say, oh, Nkrumah failed. You know, he didn't achieve his goal. And I don't think he failed, or I don't think we failed. I think it's an ongoing process.
Right.
And we only fail if we stop, if we give up, if we say we're no longer going to try and contribute to make a difference. And particularly in the 1960s in the United States, there was a freedom movement as well, freedom songs, and it replicated what was happening on the continent of Africa. Both inspired each other. We know Martin Luther King, Malcolm X all came here. Many folks went back and forth. So they were inspired by what was happening in Ghana. But those freedom songs, one of them was popularized by a group called Sweet Honey in the Rock, which were women singers who were sung a cappella. And there's one of their more popular songs was "We Are the Ones We Are Waiting For," meaning that it's not some messiah, it's not some great leader, it's like, it's us. And so whether us is whatever Generation Z, Generation X, whatever generation it is, we are the ones who are going to have to do something. We can't wait for some great leader who's going to be inspired. And, you know, they're individual, they're human beings, and they could, you know, their life is going to end at some point. And so it's a collective process. And so I have ultimate faith that we will, and we are making progress.
Angachi.
I mean, as I said from the beginning, it was a milestone. It was not supposed to be the end of the journey. It wasn't as if you declare a republic and then everything's, milk and honey. It was a stage, a strategic step in a much longer struggle. We are still struggling that struggle today. It has not failed. We have not failed. We do have stark challenges that we need to address and a generational transition that we need to manage. I think it's a great thing that the new administration has reinstated Republic Day, because it gives us an opportunity to launch the discussion. What is Republic Day about? What does it mean for a younger generation?
National Prayer and Thanksgiving Day?
I have no problem with people praying and giving thanks and so on, but you also have to struggle.
Absolutely.
You also have to struggle. Okay. And that's the key thing. Somebody needs to help kids explain what that means. What is it we are struggling about on a day-to-day basis? What are the issues? What are the tactics around which we mobilize? What's our strategy? As I said earlier, where is it we want to get to, first of all? And I think that with Republic